we were all set coming into the studio to talk about three movies, to talk about Jake Kelly, to talk about Hamnet, and to talk about Sentimental Value, because they all sort of have to do with this theme of absent fathers, fathers who chose art over fatherhood. And then, literally on the way into the studio, you get the news alert that Netflix is buying HBO, buying Warner Brothers, including HBO. And so, obviously, we have these three great critics who think a lot about the world of entertainment and the world of film and the world of television. And I just kind of asked them right off the top, I was like, hey, tell me what you think. What's your reaction to this news? And boy, they kind of go around, and what you're going to hear is kind of bleak.
This is like an extinction level event for the American film industry, and hence the film industry in general.
It is that dramatic. I can't wait for you to hear this conversation. Let's get right into it. I'm here with Bilge Ebiri and Vinson Cunningham and Teri Hart. Hello, all of you.
Hello.
Hey,
It's nice to have you here. It's nice to have you here. We're going to get into our collective father wounds in just a moment, but also just like on the way in, like I'm in the car, I look over my phone, and then I'm not supposed to touch my phone, but the alert says, hang on a second, Netflix just bought Warner Brothers, aka Netflix now owns HBO. And that's a lot of information to take in, especially at 7 in the morning. I just want to have a quick go around for everybody. Teri, what was your reaction when that gigantic news kind of lands in your inbox?
How fast can I text Elamin? That was my reaction.
You were the first person to text me. You were the first person to text me.
These are huge industry seismic shifts, I would say, since 2018 when Disney bought 20th Century Fox, which no longer exists. I mean, I think that it still has to go through regulation. Yeah. So governments have to say that this is okay. But this will have, I think, the biggest impact for studio mergers on consumers than any other merger we've seen in history. I think this is going to change what the theatrical landscape looks like. I think this is going to change what the streaming landscape definitely looks like. Are we going to lose HBO? Is there going to be a generation that doesn't see the screen of HBO?
I can't bear it. I emotionally can't bear that thought. I cannot. Yeah, and also, like, if Netflix wanted to make The White Lotus, they would have. You know, this is one of those, like, if you wanted to make Facebook, you would have, that kind of moments. Right? Bilge, in terms of seeing the reaction to this news and how sort of people are receiving it, like, how does it sit with you? Was it a big shock where you're like, hang on, these are two worlds that are so separate? Or are you kind of like, I kind of saw this coming?
Well, both, because obviously it's been sort of percolating in the news for a while, but it's kind of like it was kind of like reckoning with one's own mortality. You know how we all know we're going to die someday, right?
Yeah.
But presumably at some point comes over the course of your life, hopefully, long way from now, when you're like, today is the day I die, I think this is like an extinction level event for the American film industry, and hence the film industry in general, because Netflix is so anti-movie theaters. They're so anti the cinematic experience. I just don't see how, I don't see how. I mean, they've said, no, Warner Brothers movies will still come out in theaters. I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, remember all the stuff that they said when Disney bought Fox, and Fox does not really exist anymore, and I think that's something similar is going to happen here. I don't think Warner Brothers is going to really exist in a few years.
I love that. I was like, hey, quick reactions around the table, because we got the father wound stuff to get to. You're like, well, this is an extinction level event for American cinema. Now I'm like, great quick reaction. I don't even know how I'm supposed to like move on from that. But Vinson, I'll give you the last word on this, because I do think we need to spend more time on this conversation in general. But also, we got movies to get to, maybe the last of the movies to get to. Vinson, what's your reaction to this?
It's funny because just last night I was looking for a stand-up special to watch, Chris Rock's Tambourine, which lives on Netflix. But I went to HBO first because Chris Rock, a certain level of prestige art making, I'm like, it must be on HBO. And I just wonder if the age of, especially in America, the sort of brand name entertainment is coming to a close, where it's like my HBO, or when I was a kid watching network TV, NBC, how that meant a certain thing, Cheers, Cosby, et cetera, et cetera. That sort of differentiation of sensibility, of tone, I just wonder if that too is on the way out. And I mean, sad as it may be, this is the sort of grist upon which many people of my era, of my age, kind of defined ourselves, whether you were this kind of person or that kind of person. It seems like that thing is over, and I don't even know whether to mourn it or not. But I agree with the doom saying. Monopoly should be a bad word in the American system of free enterprise, and it seems like it is increasingly just our reality.
There is no way I can move on that quickly from this conversation, because the things that you're all saying here is that like this actually reshapes the landscape that consumers exist in pretty drastic ways, not just as, you know, the ways that sort of we experience art, but just the way that art is even made and thought about. You know, there's something kind of fundamental about the idea that we used to have these distinctions of art categories. And if I'm not mistaken, Bilge, the thing that I'm taking from what you're saying is it's now kind of all collapsed in the name of the fidelity of just kind of like entertainment that lives on your screen. Is that am I picking up the correct thread from what you're saying there?
Yeah, because also it's not just entertainment that lives on your screen. It's really just kind of background noise now. I mean, that's what so much Netflix content winds up being. Now, a lot of this also has to do with the fact that Netflix figured out streaming in a way that a lot of these other companies didn't, and that's why they're able to do this in the first place. The problem is that you know, Warner Brothers, I mean, if you look at Warner Brothers, the year that they had, they released some of the best films of the year, and they did very well by them theatrically.
And some of them were risks, right? Like Sinners was a risk, right? Like huge risks.
Risks.
Yeah.
And it didn't pay off. I mean, the films were successful. They actually did things that nobody thought they would be able to do, and yet it wasn't enough to get over just the profound debt that they were in. And that's scary. That's scary that the company can actually have a good year like that. And at the end, it wasn't even like I'm terrified of Netflix buying it. I would have also been terrified of Paramount buying it, which was the other suitor. And I just kept saying over the course of this news cycle, I was like, why does this even have to happen? Why is it one or the other? Like, why does anybody need to buy Warner Brothers? So yeah.
I have to leave it there on this because I want to return to this conversation a bit more fulsomely, because I do think you're right. There is a lot of significant consequences to theater, to entertainment, to cinema. We will return to that conversation. But in the meantime, let's return to the father wounds, shall we? There's 3 dads that we're going to talk about today. The first one is Noah Baumbach's new movie. It's called J. Kelly. Stars George Clooney. And I just want to play just a quick moment from the trailer here. Where you're going to hear is like George Clooney talking to his daughter, who is about to head off to college.
See you, Dad. I'm leaving on Saturday for Paris.
This is your last summer. It'll be so lonely here without you.
No, it won't. You're never alone.
Really? I think I'm always alone. Thanks a lot.
The perfect moment when his butler's like, oh, here you go. Here's your drink. He's like, oh, okay. Yep, I'm maybe never alone, but he is in fact lonely. Bilge, I'll start with you on this one. You wrote that George Clooney gave the performance of a lifetime in this film. What does his character's struggle with fatherhood kind of end up looking like?
Well, the beauty of it is that he's playing, I mean, George Clooney is playing Jay Kelly, who is an actor, you know, whose life does not match George Clooney's. Yeah. And yet at the same time, he's so clearly George Clooney. I mean, it's kind of George Clooney playing himself. And George Clooney is very charming. George Clooney is a person you can imagine yourself getting along with. And that's sort of what Jay Kelly is like. He's people like him. People like Jay Kelly. We like Jay Kelly watching the film. He's nice. He's kind to people. He interacts with people. He's very charming. And yet over the course of the film, we gradually come to understand, and he gradually comes to understand, oh, this guy was really not there for his family at all, even though he thinks of himself as kind of a good father. And you realize, no, he was actually kind of a terrible father. And I feel like that was unique about the film, because usually it's a much more kind of stark contrast between kind of the life you're supposed to be living and the life you are living.
There's this devastating line where his older daughter says to him, hey, you know how I know you didn't want to spend time with me? Because you didn't spend time with me. And you kind of like watch that, and you watch George Clooney's face completely crumble. There's something about this story. Teri, you said this is a story that's really about legacy, right? About how you want to be remembered. Do you want to talk about how being an artist and being a dad are sort of pitted against each other in this movie?
Yeah, they really are. I mean, it's kind of implied that, you know, he just couldn't do both. Like, he had to make a choice. He had to make a choice between being a movie star or being a dad. And now he's like that clarity is becoming more opaque for him, which is, I think, the opposite of what we usually expect with age. We usually expect things to become more clear and less opaque, and that's, I think, what Bilge's saying here is we're seeing this kind of different form of regret. He's got regret with his eldest daughter, and with his younger daughter, he's just got desperation. Like he's like white knuckling this relationship that he really doesn't have because he was an absentee dad, and he's created this myth of himself in his mind. And now he realizes that the people that he actually made are more important than the fake people that he played. And I think that is a challenge for him to wrap his head around, because you can't fashion a relationship out of nothing. And that's what he's trying to do throughout the entire movie. And these two young women who are his daughters are just dealing with the emotional damage that he created in their lives.
I like the idea of desperation being the sort of the through line, because he's like, I can't have missed it, even though he's clearly already have missed it because his daughter's about to sort of go to college. There's something so beautiful but also so heartbreaking with this character. Jay Kelly clearly has kind of put his career first. The highlight reel that you see at the end when he's receiving the Tribute Award is in fact the highlights of George Clooney's career. I was like, oh, shout out Syriana, let's go. But also the contrast is, Ron, played by Adam Sandler in this movie, played very well by Adam Sandler. He's always on the phone, always trying to solve one problem or the other for his kids, but also he's doing it on the phone. He's not present in person. I want to read this quote from an interview that the New York Times did with Emily Mortimer, who co-wrote the script. She's also in the movie. She says, getting parenting right is difficult, and that getting life is difficult. And that when you are very good at what you do and the world rewards you for it, it might be easier and less complicated to spend most of your time doing that than it is to face the messy business of being an ever-present parent. Vinson, what do you make of what Emily Mortimer is saying there?
Well, it's true. And this issue that Bilge talks about it's in some ways Clooney playing himself. This is also like explicitly one of the themes of the movie, that to be a star, to be an artist. But I think we can extrapolate this out to like any role we play in life or whatever, is to kind of play yourself and to sort of be telling a story about oneself. And what I take from that quote is that parenthood, and I was kind of triggered by this movie. My father's an artist. I'm an artist. I have two daughters, whatever. Woo! But fatherhood or parenthood is like chaotic and totally exigent and like will not conform to any pattern of storytelling. So if you have that bit of thing in you where you have to maybe try to control life by fitting it into the patterns of a story, parenthood is the disruptor of that, like par excellence. It is always escaping you. It is always throwing something at you, and then it reveals to you parts of yourself that you would like to tamp down or downplay. And so it's really a mark of Jay Kelly's weakness here, but maybe all of our weakness, that like the thing that will disrupt our inner sort of strategies is the thing that you avoid, like with the most urgency.
And it's maybe telling them, like, actually, that's why, like, the very end of your life, maybe, or towards the end of your life, that's when you start looking back at, like, the ways that you parented, like, the ways that you try to sort of tell it as some kind of neat story. And that, I think, ties very well to the next movie we're going to talk about. I want to talk about Sentimental Value. So this is Joachim Trier's movie. It's a new movie starring Stellan Skarsgård. He sort of plays this aging director who is like, oh, I want to make a movie that involves my daughter, and his daughter here played by Renate Reinsve, and so I just want to play this little clip from the trailer.
Why didn't you want to do the role? He wanted you to do it.
I can't work with him. We can't really talk. My father is a very difficult person.
So that's a movie about fathers. It's also a movie about fathers and daughters. Teri, what makes that relationship? What makes Renate's character here, Nora? What makes her relationship with her dad so difficult?
I mean, I think you can see the tonal difference in the relationship here from what we were talking about in Jay Kelly. I mean, in Sentimental Value, there really is a deep anger that I don't think exists in Jay Kelly in the same way. Stellan Skarsgård was an absentee father. He definitely chose his art over his offspring. And he also, this family is dealing with a history of mental illness that's been devastating and runs through generations. And there's a suggestion throughout the movie that Stellan is kind of trying to protect his daughters from that in some way, and they're unaware of that level of protection that he's creating for them. I think that it's suggesting that, Stellan can only show his feelings through filmmaking, which is terribly inadequate for a parenting role. I mean, that's not going to get you a Parent of the Year award.
No.
But these relationships are filled with a level of challenge and a level of generational trauma that is running very, very deep. And I think that the criticism of Sentimental Value is that, although it's, a front runner in terms of award season, but the criticism that you can find if you don't dig too deeply is that it ties up a little too conveniently, considering the depth of trauma that we're dealing with in the movie.
And I will say that, like, the thing that makes Sentimental Value work for me personally is this idea, the consistency of the idea that he can only really show his love through his filmmaking, and he's otherwise unable to look in the eye, right? In terms of, like, just in the presence of his daughters, unable to look at the consequences in the eye. There's a great scene where Stellan Skarsgård's character is like, "You guys turned out fine," and the daughters are like, "No, that cannot confirm this to be true whatsoever." But it's because he has kind of chosen the life of an artist, and to him that means not being as close to parenting as they would like him to be. How does that hold up as an excuse, Vincent? This idea that, like, I invested myself in my art, I made you guys a part of my art. That is my version of how I showed up for you.
Well, of course, it's not a very good excuse, and it's an interesting difference from Jay Kelly, right?
Yeah.
The archetype of Jay Kelly being like the artist as somebody who's just like too aloof and on some level too much of a child to even understand what he's done, right?
Yeah.
All of his help, they talk about him like he's just like a big toddler walking through this train.
They call him an infant several times.
They call him, yeah. Whereas, Skarsgård here is playing with the archetype of just like the art monster, or the art as like the artist as someone who is so categorically different that he like cannot cross this divide.
Yeah.
Which of course, it is a totally specious, like it's not real, it's not a good enough excuse. And yet, even for people who are not artists, right? I think in both of these movies, the artist, capital A, is just sort of a metaphor for like the things that make us different from other people, right?
Yeah.
And if you're serious about life, then you work to break those things down. And if you aren't, you infantilize yourself, no matter whether you're an artist or, whatever you do. The world is presenting you with a whole bunch of evasions, a whole bunch of reasons why you can't do what you really need to do. Growing up is like the thing that is impossible. I will still keep trying every day. And we all know that we live in cultures that say, well, maybe you don't have to do that. And so these are different ways of sort of succumbing to that temptation.
Bilge, what do you make of that? This idea that like these movies are both trying to deal with this idea of like, okay, you've severed this part, this artist part from the parenthood part, and it's to your great detriment, but also at the same time, it is your responsibility to sort of show up to both in the same way.
Well, we have to remember that all these films are made by people who probably are struggling with this concept, right? I mean, anybody who's been on a film set or has made a film or knows anything about filmmaking can tell you it takes you away from the people you love. It takes you away from your family.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Emily Mortimer, who wrote Jay Kelly. She's married to an actor. Their kids are actors. I mean, this is within the film industry, obviously, this is something that people are always reckoning with, and it's true. I mean, what Vincent says is absolutely true. These aren't really movies about filmmakers, but filmmakers did make them. and
Yes.
You can just feel, it just seeps into every second of these movies, that dilemma.
Yeah, and also this idea of like Stellan Skarsgård being the person to play the father here. I'm like, he's got several children who are in the business, and it must be fascinating for them to watch. Like, that's what I really want to see. I want to sit next to Alexander Skarsgård and go like, let's watch your dad try to sort through some of these questions and what this must have been like for him. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this show is called Commotion. Teri Hart is here, and Vinson Cunningham is here, and Bilge Ebiri is here, and we're talking about this theme of absent fathers in movies. And I just want to go to the next movie, which is Hamnet. It's Chloé Zhao's new movie. In this, it's an adaptation of a novel that imagines William Shakespeare leaving his young family to pursue his dreams in London, and then something tragic happens. I want to play you this clip of Paul Mescal talking about Shakespeare in this stretch.
He's shaped this love and grief, and not made it just about this pain of losing a son, but kind of making it this temple, this place that people can visit his son and his love for his son and his wife's love for his son, and it's like that's actually his brilliance to me.
Teri, Shakespeare is definitely putting his art ahead of his family. There's something really tragic about the ways that it sort of manifests itself in the novel. At the very start, the little kid is like looking for someone to protect him, and he's looking for his dad, and his dad is not there. Does Shakespeare get a pass? Because it's like 1596, and he can't FaceTime his family. Like, do we sort of understand this time period differently in terms of what kind of pressures play into it in this case?
Yeah, I mean, sure, it was a long time ago and the times were different. But in, 450 years, quick math, I'm sure it's wrong. But the change and the expectation and equal participation for fathers, I mean, that has happened at a glacial pace. I mean, a glacial pace. And it's hard to hold behavior in a period piece to through a contemporary lens.
Yeah.
But I will say that there is a long history of permission that excuses men, or sometimes even encourages their really selfish behavior. And as much as we can't go back in time and change things, I really wish we could stop with the trope. I really wish that we can move forward and talk about things being better in terms of men's participation in this. Like, what are you conflicted about? And what a luxury to be conflicted about it. Women don't have that ability to be conflicted about it as a general rule.
Well, I was going to say, like, the thing that Hamnet does is sort of, it goes in a different direction, right? It goes in a different direction than the other two. And Bilge, you were on the show not too long ago. We talked a little bit about Hamnet. But what Paul Mescal was getting at in that clip is that actually, like, as a character, Shakespeare in the novel and in the movie, he does something different, right? He sort of takes all the pain of not having been there, not being around for his son, and the thing that sort of the tragic thing that occurs, and he puts that into the art. And it might seem like maybe the art comes first, but that's actually not quite the case, right? Like, that there is a deeper sort of reckoning with the idea of, like, this pain's got to go somewhere, and this pain is going to go directly into the art. It's going to inform the art, and that's actually going to change a lot of people's lives because it is a significant play, and people do return to that play a lot. How do you understand this idea that, like, you know what, the pain can be transformed into something that will outlast that person, and that's actually maybe worthwhile?
Well, yeah, I mean, you asked, does William Shakespeare get a pass because they didn't have FaceTime back then? I think William Shakespeare gets a pass because he's William freaking Shakespeare, the greatest writer of the English language. Yeah. And and this is about Hamlet, which I think is probably the greatest play in the English language. And but it would be so funny, for example, if Jay Kelly tried to go in this direction, and if George Clooney's character in Jay Kelly turned out he was working on, like, the greatest movie ever made, so everything turned out okay. Yeah. I mean, you can only do that with Shakespeare,
right?
Yeah. But at the same time, there's also this sense that, like, look, even Shakespeare had this struggle. I mean, obviously, this is all fictional fancy. We know very little about Shakespeare. Yeah. But I love the idea in the film that the work that he's doing is really his way of confronting his grief, reckoning with his grief, and not just that, but also helping save his wife from her grief. I mean, there's this story running throughout the film of the story of Orpheus, right? Which about Orpheus descending into the underworld and saving his beloved. And we come back to that a couple of times, and that's kind of what's going on. Although there's also an ambiguity there because it's, does he save her, or are they both kind of trapped, or is he trapped? We don't really understand because ultimately they did lose their son. So the grief will never entirely go away. You can't entirely be saved from it, but Hamlet itself, the play, becomes almost this kind of forge through which other people can work out these issues.
Honestly, I feel better just having talked to all three of you about this. I really appreciate this conversation. My father wound feels better. And also just thanks for making time for this, you guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vinson Cunningham writes for The New Yorker. He also co-hosts its weekly podcast, Critics at Large. He's got his own Substack. It's called Quiet Storm. Vinson's in New York City. Bilge Ebiri is a film critic for Vulture. He was in New Haven, Connecticut. And Teri Hart is an entertainment reporter and a regular right here on Commotion. She also co-hosts the podcast The Heart of It All. She's in Toronto. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This show is called Commotion. Hey, have a great day, and we'll see you next week.